I met a gypsy.
You mentioned 125s before, and you were saying like you're bummed about like that 125s went away. Like, what's your thoughts around that whole conversation? There is a conversation.
Well, here's my thing, and I probably have said this about 9,000 times before, but let's go 9,001. I think that there's a gap. It's multifaceted. There's a gap going from a mini bike to a 250F. That is too big of a leap for most people. Unless you have a massive growth spurt, you just aren't developed enough, man. A 250F is still a fucking heavy bike, a lot of horsepower, and when that thing gets squirrely, to be able to wrangle that back in as a kid who just stepped off an 80, I think you're rolling some dice there. So I don't like that. That's one thing. I think that we need a bike that if a guy's looking at it, maybe he's in junior high and he's like, I want to get into motocross. What bike should I get? Like right now he's looking at a 250F that's $6,000. Maybe you can get a used one for $45,500. That's a lot of money. How is a kid in 8th or 9th grade going to earn $5,000? Never mind, he's got to still get gear and tires and gas and all that shit. I think that if they could somehow make it sort of a spec bike where like, stop development or just throw your old 125 engine into your current 250F chassis, like however you could do it as cheap as possible. I've even told them, cut it with the Renthal bars and the Pro Taper shit. Just go back to some steel shitty bars, Changshin tires. I don't give a shit what you put on it. Bring the cost down as low as you can possibly bring it and sell 125s, right? Even if we don't, I am accepting that that's probably we're never gonna race those at a pro level again. But there needs to be a class locally, at local events around the world for a 125 class. And it needs to be geared towards a guy like me. I'd fucking race it. If there's a 125 class everywhere I go, that's what I'm racing. Yeah. Because I can ride that bike and there's a real good chance I'm gonna be safer on that than anything else. It keeps my speed down a little bit. I can't jump crazy shit. I'm sure you've been to local tracks and you watch guys that have no business being in the air, but they can roll through a turn and just go, on a 450. And they can go 100, they can go 100 feet.
That's me.
And if it goes wrong at all, it goes really wrong. And they don't have the skills to pull it back and correct it. On a 125, you can't get through the turn with any kind of speed. You can't really jump that far. I mean, it's self-limiting in terms of how big you can go. So I think that it's a great bike to force you to learn fundamental skills. Technique, body positioning, clutch use, brake use. If you can't utilize those skills, if you don't have them, you will not be able to jump anything. You will not be able to go very fast. Yeah. They're fucking hard to ride. That's the bottom line. They're very hard to ride. And I just also think if they brought them back, even in limited quantities, because we've this little last several years of everybody buying them, the pool of them is depleted, man. And if you go to buy one now like that, what you just announced in LA, that's a gem because they're hard to find. And if you find one, these people, most of them know what they have on it. Yeah. So, because now people are buying them because they want one, for one reason or another. It's not a kid going, I'd like to try motocross out, but I don't have $5,000, Yeah. Maybe, but if you could buy a used one, and I was stoked to see this, the Fantic that's running over in the GPs now. I thought, well, maybe if people like that took, because they've got just basically a copyright deal with Yamaha where they use a Yamaha engine. It's a Yamaha frame. It's a Yamaha. Yeah. Right. And they just changed a little bit of the porting and a pipe and boom, they called it something else. And here you go. I don't know how it gets done, but
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Oh, I was going to say, I've screamed at the guys at Suzuki forever. Like, you guys need something. Do this. Just bring your 2-strokes back. At least the 125. I think it would be, you've got to consider how are people getting into this sport? Yeah. Right. Pro racing's going great. Bike sales are great right now, but how does a guy get into racing? A guy who doesn't, this is a blue collar sport, whether you want to admit it or you don't. This is the lowest, these aren't kids playing lacrosse and polo.
Our sport is the lowest entry point of a motor that you can race. This would be cheaper than go-karts.
Totally.
And we have to be honest about that.
Yeah. And truly, if you look at what you get in terms of technology out of a 450 for 10 grand, it's still a fantastic deal. You pay 10 grand for a mountain bike. I have a specialized in my garage that's worth $13,000.
It's fucking crazy.
I'm the fucking motor on that thing. How am I paying 13 grand for it?
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that a 14-year-old kid doesn't have 5 grand. He doesn't have 5 or 6 grand. So if he can buy a used 125 for 2, well, shit, he can sling papers and flip burgers at In-N-Out and come up with that, right?
Dude, I don't
So
know
I just
whether,
feel like we're missing that.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.